Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too. Izotope is a proud sponsor of today's episode. Do you know about their new RX12? This is the way to make your audio flawless, all-in-one audio restoration. RX's 50-plus tool ecosystem is everything you need to rescue, refine, and enhance every project, blending surgical control with rapid results. Fully flexible, RX12 includes a standalone audio editing application and suite of software plugins to use in digital audio workstations. For decades, RX has pushed what's possible in audio editing and restoration, bringing out magic in every scene, song, and story. Powered by pioneering machine learning tech, it's the supporting star behind countless Oscar, Grammys, Emmys, and the winner of a Technical Academy Award. Go get this for yourself. Izotope RX12. It's out. IZOTPE.com. For 60 years, Heel Sound has provided innovative, professional, quality sound for stage, studio, broadcast, and podcast. Grammy-winning artists and sound engineers worldwide trust Heel microphones for their legendary sound. To find out more about the full line of Heel microphones and products, visit heelsound.com. That's HEILSOUND.com. I'm using a Heel PR40 microphone right now.
It's like, men, you can do this too. You can be good at this too. There's no reason that you can't take on some of this really important work. Like, you have these skills too. So if we think of care work as just like women's job, then I think we're going to create a huge care vacuum in our society. And that really worries me.
What's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our show for Thursday, May 28th, 2026. Look at us. Here we go. Starting summer, 2026. We can do this. Hope everybody's having a good spring so far. If you're ending your semester, if your kids are ending their semester and starting their summer breaks, good luck. I hope you got all your camps lined up. I hope everything's working out for you. On today's show, I'm very honored to welcome a friend and my wife's former bandmate and a brilliant scientist and researcher and author, Darby Saxbe. You heard her there on the front side of the episode talking about men as caregivers. Excuse me, clear my throat there. This is something that is hugely important to me. I take care of my kids. I do a lot of work with my kids and around the house, and you know, we have a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying being a dad, but I don't really know any of the science behind it. Nobody really knows the science behind it. Darby's book, Dad Brains, is coming out now, and it should be out this week. You can go order it. Right now, you can go to her website, darbysaxbe.com. That's DARBYSAXBE.com, and order her book, Dad Brains. And this is one of the first studies of what happens to dads when they become dads. What happens to men when they become dads in the brain, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. You know, what is going through our system. And Darby's a brilliant researcher, a brilliant teacher and writer, and she's combined and summarized and coalesced and narrativized her findings of 15 years of research into this great book. And it's fantastic. Everybody should go buy it. You can order it now. You can pre-order it, or I think it should be out this week. I think we've lined it up to where this is coming out this week. It should be available everywhere where books are found. You can also follow her on the Instagram. And that's Darby Saxbe, PhD, DARBYSAXBE, PhD. You can also find her Substack, darbysaxbe.substack.com, as well as usmcmillan.com. That's got the book there. That's the publisher. Excuse me, Macmillan Publishers. Dad Brain, the new science of fatherhood and how it shapes men's lives. Right? I mean, come on. Who is my audience here? If this is you, if this applies to you, if you were like me, this is right up your alley. It's right up my alley. What is the blurb on the front by Richard Reeves? It says, superb. Saxbe shows how men become fathers at the level of biology, exploding stubborn myths about dads not being suited for parenting. Impressive and inspiring. That's by Richard V. Reeves, author of Boys and Men. Yeah, man, this is what I'm talking about, is what's going on. It's so fun to know Darby and to know her husband Dan, and to see this book that she'd been working on for so long finally come out and be published and just be, just she's blowing up everywhere. It's a cultural story that I think we don't really have a handle on how we talk about dads in 2026. There's the boomers versus millennials versus Gen X and Gen Z. And, we kind of make these sort of generalizations across generational lines, which I think are relevant, but I still don't think we have a handle on how we talk about this kind of new dad brain, or how it works. I think the comedy, sort of stuff of the Nate Bargatze's Mr. Mom movie and all these things like dads are out of touch, dads don't know what's going on. Like, it's not really true. I think a lot of dads that I know, know what's going on and are very involved in it all. And it's great. And there's a lot of sharing of responsibilities and sharing in all the fun and just participating in our kids' lives. I think there was a great meme that Darby posted after we did this interview where it was like, the image of fathers we had growing up, and it was a picture of Darth Vader. And then, the image of fathers we have now, and it's Mandalorian and Grogu, in kind of a Star Wars structure. I was like, yes, that totally makes sense. You know what I mean? That hopefully this sort of being scared of your dad, or wait till your dad comes home, and it's like, it's just not that kind of way anymore. We don't live in those kind of houses, hopefully, in a lot of ways. That just meaning that, the dad is the punisher, or the guy who's going to come home and be mad and hit you with a belt. I think that's been an old, antiquated way of living for a long time. But yeah, it's great. Darby has so much information, and I ramble on, as always, as I want to do. And it's great. Darby is incredible. We have a really great conversation about what's going on, inside of men's bodies when they become dads, and what's going on inside of our brains, and what does this all mean, and how do we move forward and kind of keep building on the research that she's done, and just applying it to the understanding of our day-to-day lives as dads. So it's a fantastic book. Everybody go out and buy it. Dad Brain by Darby Saxbe, The New Science of Fatherhood and How It Shapes Men's Lives. You can find her on all the things, Darby Saxbe, PhD on Instagram, darbysaxbe.com. You can buy the book there. You can contact her. She's incredible. Yeah, let's keep the conversation going. You can write me, Hyphenate Halftime at Instagram.com, or find me on the Instagram at Randy S. Randall, and let me know what you think about our talk, our discussion. What's it like in your household? Is dad picking up, are you a dad who picks up their kids from school? Are you a dad who knows your kids' birthdays? Do you know the names of their teachers? I do. I don't say that as being a dick, but I just that's just part of our day-to-day lives. I talk to my kids about what they have for lunch every day. If I didn't pack it, what do they get at school? I think it's fun. I like knowing what they have going on, and what's exciting them, what's frustrating them, all those little challenges, all the fun ups and downs of just being a little person. I remember those things were important, and they definitely shaped me for who I became, and so I think hopefully I get to be part of their lives and who they are, in the long run. So, awesome. Here's my conversation with Darby. Thanks so much, Darby, for coming on. I appreciate it. All right. Hi, Darby. How are you? Thanks so much for coming on Hyphenate.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, this is great. I'm so excited about your new book. I want to talk all about dad brains. It's incredible. I have a good friend at our kids' elementary school. She went to the Festival of Books, the LA Times Festival of Books, and she said, I saw this woman speak about the dad brain. I was like, Darby, I know Darby, and she told me all about it. I was like, oh, it's incredible. But
that's so
but
cool.
we know each other.
Small world.
Yeah, but we know each other socially as well. You played briefly in a band with my wife. I think that's how we first met.
That's right. It was Miami. Wait, what was the band called?
Yeah.
Miami from something from Miami.
Yeah.
My gosh, how am I blanking on this? This was just a few years ago.
I know. Well, but it was pre-pandemic, I think. Maybe that was the big turning point. What was it called? Now it's so funny because I helped record some stuff with
Yes, you did.
I don't know.
Yeah,
we practiced here in the studio.
That's right. The big hit was Christmas in Miami.
Right. Yes, that was it. Yeah.
That's
We were going
so
for
funny.
for the holiday market.
Yeah. Yeah, but we rehearsed in your studio.
Right. Yeah. That's where I'm coming from now. Yeah, that's awesome. And
you gave me some hard pointers.
Exactly. And I've been over to your house to record at your husband's studio for some things as well. Yeah. But we're here today to talk about you and about science and about the new book. Tell me a little bit, what's the quick thing that we can get into more details of it, but what's the general tagline for the book?
Yeah, totally. So the book is coming out June 9th. Mm-hmm. So we're about a, release date leading up to that. And
there'll be a link in the show note. Everybody can go buy right now. Everybody
fabulous.
We'll have links there.
Please do. So the book is about my research at USC. So the work I've done in my lab over the last 15 years, looking at how fatherhood changes men's brains and bodies, their hormones, their brain structure, their brain function, but then also kind of more largely, how does fatherhood change men's sense of identity, their relationships, their physical health, their mental health, their sense of meaning and purpose. So the first half of the book is called The Science of Fatherhood. And so it's like a lot of research about, like, there's a chapter on dad bod, there's a chapter on mental health and postpartum depression, chapter on hormones, chapter on brain. And then the second half is called The Practice of Fatherhood. And it's interviews with a lot of different dads, kind of about their experiences of fatherhood and kind of zooming out. Oh, and here's my son.
Hey, what's up, Scott? How you doing?
I'm in the book.
Oh. And Scott is in the book. So there is a Spiral Stairs cameo
Amazing.
in the book.
Amazing.
He talked to me about being a dad on tour.
Oh, my gosh.
Because I wanted to talk to dads who kind of had to
That's a unique perspective.
Travel for work and how that affected their experience of being a dad.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. How old are your kids now, Scott? They've got to be almost in their teens.
Roxy is going to be 15 next month.
Oh, that's great. That's exciting.
It's going.
Yeah.
She has a cameo in the Pavements movie. I don't know if you've seen that yet, Randy.
Yeah.
She pops up in that.
Yeah.
We got to do our thing soon.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I've been so lax on it, but
it's all good.
I'm around.
Okay, whenever you're ready to go, you just tell me. I'm here. I can email you, but yeah, whenever you want to do it. If you got time this week, let's do it this week. We'll bust it out. I can put it in the queue.
Okay. I'll have fun.
All right. Enjoy your coffee. Good to see you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
We had the drop in. So why dads? How did this come about? I mean, I did a little bit of research on you, and this isn't your first, big study, but you've been working and doing research and have a lot of great published articles before this. But how did you kind of come to this? And maybe talk to me, and we'll go backwards a little bit through your research and how you got to this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's like the joke in psychology grad school was always like, research is me search. Mm-hmm. So we always studied the things that we were interested in kind of figuring out in our own lives. And so I'm no exception to that rule. So kind of both like a personal story and then also a science story for why I think fathers are so interesting. So the personal story is that when I was 9, my parents got divorced. I talk about this in the book. And we did joint custody. So every other week I was either at my mom's house or my dad's house. And my dad went in that time that he was kind of solo with us, those weeks that he was alone with me and my brothers, kind of went from a very typical checked out 1980s dad to hands-on, solely responsible for all the housework, all the cooking, all the schlepping us around, checking our homework. So I kind of saw him really transform as a parent and kind of be the primary caregiver during those weeks. And so made me think a lot about how we learn to parent and how there's a transformation that takes place. Like I feel like I saw that transformation in my own life kind of right in front of my eyes. So I've always been really interested in families, family relationships, fathers, men's kind of adaptation to care work. And then when I was starting my own lab, I was really interested in studying the transition to parenthood because it just seemed like such a rich inflection point of all these changes across domains like neurobiological change, identity change, behavioral change. And so I wanted to kind of tap into this window of plasticity. And I wanted to do a scan study to look at the brain, how the brain was changing. And at the time that I was designing this study, I was actually pregnant with my second kid. And I was not allowed to go into the scanner because they were concerned about risk factors with pregnancy. So, which is not to say that you can't ever scan pregnant women, but generally you need like a higher threshold for safety concerns. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, this could be tricky if I want to get a lot of women and scan them. And that's when I started thinking, why not look at dads? No one is studying dads. And then once I had that idea, I actually got really interested in it because what's cool about dads is that they aren't experiencing the pregnancy, yet we know they're also participating in care. They're also getting experience with a baby, with a child. So they're undergoing change, but without the hormones of pregnancy, it's like, so what does the experience do to the brain? So it's almost like a way to separate out. Like when you're studying moms, you're conflating pregnancy experience, pregnancy hormones, pregnancy changes with parenting experiences. So with dads, it's like you can separate out pregnancy and parenting, right? Those are two separate things. So I got really interested and realized no one else was really looking at dads. And so I jumped on that and then I kind of just ran with that. And that was 15 years ago.
That's incredible. And your background is in neurobiology and psychology. Tell me a little bit about how we got there too. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I trained as a clinical psychologist. So I went to UCLA for my PhD. And as a grad student, I worked on a big study called the Center for the Everyday Lives of Families, where we studied family dynamics, family lives, and I got really interested in stress. So on that study, I actually worked with cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and I linked family cortisol patterns to their daily experiences and their relationships. So I've always been interested in this idea of how does our neurobiology map onto our social context and our relationship experience. And then I did a postdoc where I got trained to learn how to do brain imaging and work with brain imaging data. I actually did a study where I scanned teenagers and I had them looking at images of their parents. So now my work is parents looking at images of their babies. So I've kind of flipped it around, but I'm using a lot of the same methods. And yeah, so, I became an assistant professor at USC. So after being at UCLA for grad school, I basically just went across town, wanted to stay in LA, husband in music. So this was a city that made a lot of sense for both of us. And yeah, started my lab, designed my first study, and then, that's what I'm still working on.
It's incredible. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's so much that goes on, as a parent of two myself and, but it's the kind of thing where I think most of us we're too tired. There's something going on here. There's something happening. What is it? I don't know. I'm just tired. There's been so many conversations are had, 10 minutes before falling asleep and like, what happened today? What was this? And, without really a care or an understanding. And I think so much of, you go through is like, well, this is getting older. This is what it's like to take care of somebody. How is it? I mean, obviously you're a parent yourself and you have a husband who's very observable, a father, within the household. I mean, how do you, I mean, obviously this is, this goes with any kind of scientific research, but, what point is your personal perspective play into this, or how, your own personal observations and the scientific observations? I mean, there must be so much it's not like you're studying, the migration patterns of bees and you have to go somewhere to the Congo and research a very exotic animal. You have access to families and to these subjects that you do study. How does that all work for you, or how do you keep it separate, or do you need to keep it separate? Does it all inform each other in a good way?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I think one of the unique things about being a psychologist and a clinical psychologist at that is that, yeah, we're not studying abstract entities. Like, we're studying people, and we are people. So in some ways that makes it easier because we have our own experiences and our own intuitions, and we observe what's interesting in our own lives, and then that creates ideas for research. But it can also be a detriment because as humans, we have a lot of biases. So we might study certain things through certain lenses that are determined by our culture or our expectations. And so it can be harder to be objective. So I think it's like, as a human studying humans, it's kind of both a blessing and a curse. But definitely for me, like becoming a parent, and I talked about this with my husband, with Dan, it was like I should have been so well qualified to become a mom, because when I had my first pregnancy, I had already been studying families and family relationships for like 6 years in grad school, right? So like I said, I did that Center for the Everyday Lives of Families. We were following dual income families around. We were observing how they talk to their kids. We were, measuring their stress levels in lots of different ways. So it's like, and I knew all the research. I'd studied child development. And yet I still was so kind of like overwhelmed by how hard it was. And so it was kind of like, if I have access to all this knowledge and, these resources, and I'm still kind of taken aback by the challenges of this transition, how much harder must it be for someone who doesn't get those privileges? And so, that seemed like a really important window to study, because it is this kind of game changer for families, right? To welcome a new baby. I know you've had that experience yourself with being a dad of several kids.
Yeah, we have two little boys, 12 and 6. And I mean, there's so much. I mean, and you find with having the knowledge is one thing, and then the lived experience is another. It sounds like,
yeah, and they totally inform each other, like you were saying. But it's also like you want to be careful to not let your lived experience totally determine the way you think about your research, because ultimately you still need to look at the data and bring some objectivity to it.
They're data-driven studies that have to be replicable. They have to pass scientific rigor and peer study and peer review and all things in those ways. But I would imagine it's an area of interest, a subject of interest that everybody will bring their own read to it as well. I mean, again, like we said, that we're not studying, faraway quasars and light pulses. These are, very interesting things. How has that been I have a million questions. I hope it's okay. I have no, outside of my personal experience, but I'm so curious about the topic in so many ways. But is there, how have the reviews been? I mean, obviously people that come into this field of study are beyond educated and beyond experienced in this kind of world. But what has that been like in reviewing people as you review the study and as you review the book and with peers and colleagues?
You mean in terms of like what kind of reception the book's been getting so far?
Yeah. And how does it fit within this field of study, kind of in a larger sort of thing? Like I said, I'm not of that world, but what is it? Where does it sit within the research sort of world, and how are people bringing their own personal biases into it as well? I mean, it must happen.
Yeah, totally. So I definitely, and the book is not just my work. So, one of the fun things about writing it was really having to do a lot of research into all these different topics to kind of flesh out this into like a book length story. And I really needed to set the stage, like, before I even get into the brain, I want to talk about evolutionary biology and what makes fathers special and what motivates father participation and how do males even recognize their own babies, right? Because that's a question mark, like paternity uncertainty. So there's like all this foundation.
Maury Povich made a whole career out of this.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Like the DNA test. Right. And like one of the challenging things about being human is that we conceal our ovulations. So human males rarely know when they've caused a pregnancy. And
Mm.
so if you're a human male, you have to have all these different mechanisms for ensuring that your kids are in fact your kids. And that can totally shape dad's investment in childbearing. So there's a chapter on that. But so I sort of felt like I got to, as an academic, like I'm doing my own research, I'm collecting data, I'm writing it up, I'm publishing it, but I'm in my kind of narrow silo. And so this was a cool chance to actually talk to a lot of different researchers, read a lot of foundational stuff in the field, and kind of like try to tell a larger story. So it's kind of situated in terms of, here's what we know about fatherhood that's interesting. And it's new terrain because there are so little books out there about the science of fatherhood. I mean, there are a handful that have come out in the last year. Like Sarah Hrdy has a book called Father Time, which is really great. There's a book called Father Nature by Jim Rilling. I quote both of those books in Dad Brain, but I really wanted to use a broad approach to try to understand, like, what do we know about the fathering brain and body. And then the reviews so far have been really good, but it's a little too soon to say because we're still a little out from publication. But it's been really fun to talk to people about it, like talking to you, talking to other people, because I feel like it is a topic that just resonates with people. And it's always fun to talk to men about it because they're kind of like, especially when I talk to dads, like, oh, what's your
Sure.
book about? What are you working on? I'm like, well, it's actually about men's brains and bodies. And they're like, what?
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating. I mean, I think on so many levels, there's a part of me, as a punk, as a progressive man, human, leftist, so part of Silicon Valley, I'm thinking, but this is men, it's misogyny, this is the patriarchy, this is the stuff we fight against, like, but obviously I know you and knowing your family, knowing your story, that you obviously are going to take a very insightful tact to it. So I thought that's what's so interesting about it too. But there is so much of me that I just think, being a product of the 90s, and the man of a father in this time, that it's just like, oh, it's not about us, it's about the mom, it's about the kids, everybody, this kind of put the family first sort of feelings. I guess the question in there is, we said there hasn't been a lot of research from that. I guess historically, I'm of two minds, right? I would imagine, like, well, old science, old psychology is a misogynistic, patriarchal boys club. Were they just not wanting to look at themselves? You would think they would all be about themselves, or was it this controlling sort of, what is that narrative that you've seen kind of shaped around the history of this sort of thing, and how do you sort of come in contact with that?
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think in terms of the sort of patriarchy part of it, one thing that's interesting to me is like how we are kind of seeing this resurgence of kind of neo-traditional gender roles where it's like, right-wing spaces. I think there's a lot of conversations about like women belong at home and men should do this,
Sure.
women should do this. And part of why I wanted to write the book is to really push back against these really polarized kind of gender essentialist narratives and say, like, men are really important as fathers. Like, men make huge contributions to childcare. Like, this is not just mom's job solely, right? Like, we want to expand our understanding. But it's interesting about like biomedical research, like you said, is dominated by male examples, like like so many of our studies of like heart disease and lung disease are used only male participants. And even our animal model studies, like rat studies, the rats were always male. So there are these big gaps in our understanding of women's health and women's bodies. But the opposite is kind of true when it comes to talking about parents and parent child relationships. So much of the work on parenting is focused exclusively on moms. And I think that just comes from this bias that moms are the only parents who matter, even though in a lot of species and even in a lot of human cultures, dads play an important role. So it's kind of like those blinders just were very specific to understanding parenthood. And so that was one of my goals, was to try to kind of push up against that.
It's so interesting. I mean, it definitely feels, I can see sort of the cultural conversation, on both the left side, the right side of it all. And but this is, herein lies, the mission of science, like, well, these are facts. This is research. This is information that, could be, and then, political agendas or any other kind of cultural movements can spin information one way or the other. It's just so it's interesting that there has not been a lot of research up until this point about it. And this is sort of, it seems like one of the, that you're doing the emerging research on this side of it.
Yeah. And I feel like there is this narrative that like women are just wired to know how to be moms and they're wired to be good at care. And that's like totally innate for them. And I think a lot of dads find that like it makes them more intimidated or reluctant to participate fully because they're like, well, I just don't have the knack. I'm not going to be good at it. The baby doesn't like me as much, like whatever it is. I think we do have these narratives. And so, but if you really look at the science, men's brains do change too when they become parents, just as women's brains change. Men's hormones do change. Men report that parenting is really meaningful for them. So it's like, I wanted to kind of make the point that men have the capacity to build these skills, and it's more about investment. And it's like, if you think of caregiving not as like an innate trait, but rather as like a skill that you practice and learn, there's no reason there have to be like gender walls around that, right? Like some men are some of the most sensitive caregivers I know. And some moms are maybe not so great. So, different couples kind of find their own different roles. Like, I'm curious for you, like, how did you kind of navigate that transition into fatherhood? Did you feel confident right off the bat?
No, scared. I think that was really, those first few days. I definitely, we still joke about it, but you leave the hospital and you get in the car and I think we're both checking, like, is there anybody going to like sign off on this? Like, who's in charge here? And you realize, oh, that's us. And I think that was one of those the first time you really experience that feeling of like, oh, there's no one else. This is just us. They're just letting us go home with this little baby. And it's because I think up until that point through pregnancy, you have a doctor, you have somebody of authority that you're sort of checking in with in some ways. And through the delivery, we were very lucky. We had a very healthy delivery. But again, you're someone you're checking with, almost kind of this, and then, okay, bye-bye. And when you get in the car, and I think, we took a picture coming home, just like, going through the threshold, just, almost like when we got married, just sort of like, oh, look, it's us holding this baby. And, and you look, and it looks so awkward now, but here we are before we go into the house for the first time. And it just felt like there was very much a door, like, okay, this is a line in the sand that we've now crossed over. And this is the rest of our lives. And, yeah, I don't know. And we just, and again, so much of it, it's just, it's trial and error. It really, I think is the best, way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, the more you practice, the more you do it, the better you learn, the more confident you get. And I think if men start to talk themselves out of playing a role, then they don't get that confidence and they don't build that bond. And so thinking about this idea that men can be equipped to be sensitive parents, I think kind of upends some of those assumptions that some men are kind of bringing with them into fatherhood.
Well, I'm sure, so many conversations that we have internally are similar to the conversations, or just the internal dialogue that women have, or any person has through anything in their life. But the conversation being with my own father or with my own, example, because again, you only know what your experiences are, right? And this is the same, for mothers, for anybody doing any kind of life or living any kind of activity. You only know what you've seen, and there's the things you don't like and go, okay, well, I know what I don't want to do, but there's so often the thing of like, well, but that's, I'm just cutting things out. But now the question is, now there's a wider open field of what do I do? And if it hasn't been modeled for you, or if it hasn't been shown, or you don't have personal examples of that, that's where that field gets very confusing and can be treacherous. And that's where that trial and error happens. So it's easy to say, well, I don't want to be like my dad, or I don't want to be like my mom, or I don't want to be like this person. I don't want to be like this person. well, but who do you want to be like, and what does that look like? And I think that's a conversation I find with myself still to this day, as I have conversations with my kids or as we do parenting, activities and roles of responsibility. I'm like, I don't know what the correct answer is. I know what I'm not going to yell at them. I'm not going to hit them. I'm not going to do all the things that I perceive as being negative, but that positive thing is murky sometimes.
Yeah. Like we don't always have a lot of great models. And, in the book I talk about there are all these sort of different cultures that do fatherhood differently. But if you look at hunter-gatherer societies, like we humans spent 95% of our time on this planet as hunter-gatherers. And so that is like, those are the societies that we kind of evolved, our brains evolved to be part of. And you are surrounded by people, you're living in this kind of band of 20 to 30 people, and kids are raised totally in community, like collectively, right? Like everybody's kind of involved, everybody's holding babies. And I talked to an anthropologist who studies one society, the Aka, where dads are spending about 50% of their waking hours within arm's reach of a baby or toddler. So the men are very involved in childcare. And it makes sense because you're just always around the kids, like older siblings help raise kids, peer groups, like young kids are playing with older kids. And so everybody has this comfort level. Everyone, like, for example, he told me if you handed anyone a baby, they would know what to do. They're all comfortable with babies because, every baby in the community is growing up sort of in public. And I think contemporary societies, like we're so spread out, we're so isolated. We don't have those intergenerational networks a lot of the time where there are a lot of helpers on hand. And so we're kind of like writing our own playbook. And I think that helps explain why a lot of parents are just overwhelmed because they don't, like you said, they don't have those positive models.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, is not to spoil the book, but is there a message? Is there a takeaway, or is there a type of advice, or something to that through your research and through the survey of the field? Like, what is the enticement there? What is supposed to do?
Definitely. Yeah, like I would say, there are a few kind of like big takeaways, and one is just this idea that we kind of talked about already, like great fathers are made, not born. Like these skills can come online with time, investment, and practice. And we can see that when we look at the brain. So like my lab, like I said, had scanned dads during their partner's pregnancy, and then again in that first year after a baby's birth. And we found that men's brains changed in ways that looked a lot like changes that have been observed in mothers' brains. And it sounds kind of bad, but it's actually, we think, adaptive, which is that the brain loses gray matter volume across that transition into parenthood. So the brain is kind of remodeling, and probably in a way that helps us be more efficient and helps us kind of streamline our processing of social information. So men's brains are doing it, women's brains are doing it. And with men, the story is there's just more variability in how much those changes are taking place. And it's really linked with dads' time that they're spending with their kids. So it's kind of like the more dads are showing up, the more parenting practice they're getting, the more their brain is changing, the more their hormones are changing. And so it becomes this like virtuous cycle that as dads start to participate in care, they're kind of building a neurobiology that supports that and supports them as sensitive and empathetic caregivers. Some men, don't even know that they've, made a baby. So they're not involved in care at all. And we don't see that same kind of plasticity happening with dads. But I think the other big takeaway, so the first is just like, this is this transformative time, and it's not, the transformations aren't reserved just for mom, but really it's dynamic for dads too. And the other big takeaway is that fathers are really important in kids' lives. And we know that dads can parent in special ways. They make special contributions to kids' outcomes. They provide unique opportunities to kids. And we know that kids who have fathers that are involved turn out better across a lot of different kinds of outcomes. So fathers matter. And also fathers are changing too. I guess if I had to like
Sure,
totally nutshell it.
It's so interesting. I mean, I feel like, this has been a great source of comedy through the years. You know what I mean? This is the kind of the Mr. Mom thing. This is, what I mean? We're talking about these types of things of, isn't it so funny that parents care? And, I think we live in this social media age where, we've all seen the memes of like, oh, look, the dad with the stroller. And he gets applauded for just pushing a stroller. Meanwhile, moms are, criticized, like, why do you have that stroller, not this stroller? And just him just holding a baby and man being anywhere around a baby just seems to be the father of the year. These types of, kind of observations. But I feel like culturally we're growing past it so much to the point. I mean, there's a film coming out now, or maybe already out, with Nate Bargatze, where it's kind of a remake of Mr. Mom. And isn't it so funny? Look at this guy. He's a dad. And I saw some criticism of it where it's like, this would have been the greatest movie in the 80s. In fact, it was. It's already been done. Like, what is this film and the conceit of? Isn't it charming that a dad's fumbling through caregiving responsibilities, and it's like, what is that even? Is that relatable in 2026? Is this even is that even real?
Yeah.
Like, men have grown past this culturally. Our stereotypes have evolved.
Totally. Like, men have totally stepped up. There's so much data on this. Like, millennial dads are doing triple the amount of time spent in childcare as dads as their fathers or grandfathers. And Gen Z dads are doing even more. So they are spending more hands-on time with kids, more direct childcare. They're more likely to do things like make doctor's appointments for kids, read to kids, participate in kids' homework. Like, dads are really showing up as good parents. And we've seen those trend lines converging in terms of how much time men are spending in childcare. Like, there's been a huge uptick. And there was kind of growth around the pandemic where, of course, a lot of people went remote. And so a lot of men were just around their kids more day to day. And there was a big question mark, like, would that kind of endure? Like, once people maybe went back to the office, and it did. So we saw increased father time with kids, and those increases have kind of sustained. So there's been like a huge kind of upward curve in men's participation in childcare. And in the book, I talked about kind of like pop culture depictions of fatherhood and how they've shifted. Like, even if you just look at the Star Wars universe, it's like you have Darth Vader is like this super scary, intimidating father figure who's literally like trying to kill his son. And then, like, more recent episodes, you have like the Mandalorian, who's like caring for baby Yoda and is like carrying him around and protecting him. So just this different idea of kind of like what makes a good man and what makes a good dad. And there was I quote this cultural critic who looked at a bunch of sitcoms from the 80s and 90s and 2000s and said men who were fathers were often depicted as like humorously foolish. Like, they would be the butt of the joke because they were inept or they didn't know how to parent. And I think you're right. Like, that's pretty outdated. Like, that does not match how we know men are showing up as fathers these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just like, I think of something like a Homer Simpson, you know what I mean? But I feel like just as much as, economically the show is no longer relevant, a single dad can work one job and afford a house and to support 3 kids,
Yeah.
The 2-car family. It's like, just as much as that is unrealistic, his depiction of the fat, dumb, lazy, checked out dad who doesn't remember the kids' names also isn't relevant anymore in a reality kind of way.
Exactly. Yeah. And Marge is like a full-time stay-at-home mom, and like that just isn't a very common arrangement anymore.
Yeah. That so many things have changed. The story around the science of dads and hormones. I saw you had done earlier research. The acronym is spacing me right with H. It was H. What was that? What was the study you did with HART or H?
Oh, was it
hormones across parenting transitioning?
Yes, I you might be thinking like HPA axis, like the cortisol research, or maybe
yes, yeah, I think that was it. Yeah. But it is about the physical changes of just becoming a parent.
Yes, yeah. So I've done work on cortisol levels. There's a hormone called prolactin that seems important for fathering behavior. Testosterone levels, which we know are kind of dynamic in new dads. oxytocin levels, which also seem to be tied to parenting behavior. So there are all these hormones, and this is one thing, like in pop culture, I see a lot of like mom holds her baby for the first time and she's flooded with oxytocin. It's like, guess what? Dads also are flooded with oxytocin, and new dads have similar oxytocin levels as new moms. So this is kind of another example of where some of our assumptions maybe get baked into thinking the hormones only matter for moms, but new dads' hormones are changing too. And we know that testosterone is dropping a lot of the time in new dads, not just in human dads, but tons of animal studies have found this too. Like testosterone changes in males around the birth of a new baby. So our hormones are shifting, and that's reflecting kind of our investment in parenting and our participation in parenting, which, just underscores, I think, how plastic we are and how much our neurobiology is molded by our experiences.
It's incredible. I mean, I had a woman on who a previous guest where we talked about hormone replacement therapy and women in menopause and this time in their life and around the studies and the things that have and have not happened around those kinds of issues. But I'm so curious, in terms of men and hormones and these things, does your research go into that, or is there a thing? I know there's a lot of stuff. There's the hymns branding. There's all this stuff of low T, high T, this T, that T. All these kinds of things. Like, what has your research sort of found around that? Do men need to take more hormones? Do they work with the hormones they have? How does that sort of look according to your research?
Yeah, it's a great question, because there is, like you said, there are so many testosterone supplementation commercial products and offerings now. And I think a lot of men, even young men, are getting targeted by these ads. And so that's kind of new, the idea that you would want to kind of modulate your testosterone. And what my work has found is that actually changes in testosterone around the birth of a new baby are probably adaptive in dads. So I have a whole chapter on testosterone in the book. It's called The Trouble with Testosterone. And I talk about how it actually seems like, for example, if you look at birds, how do testosterone levels dip around the birth of hatchlings? Like, you want that shift. You want that short-term drop in testosterone because it is helping you invest more in nurturing your offspring. And, really high testosterone is kind of driving mating opportunity. So you're like getting out there, trying to get as many chances to spread your seed as possible. Once you've succeeded, then it's actually like you want to shift your focus and make sure that you're provisioning the new baby that you have produced successfully. So I think we can get really fixated on this idea that men need like consistently super high testosterone. That's actually not healthy for men. And it's not really healthy for their different roles that they're playing. Like, I did a study where I found when women had higher testosterone partners after birth, they reported more trouble in the relationship. And I did another study where I found that when men's testosterone levels were dipping during pregnancy, they were subsequently more invested in their co-parenting relationships with their partners. So it's like men are often more focused on their partner and their new baby when they have a little bit of a drop in testosterone, which doesn't mean that men should have like clinically low testosterone. Like, we know that's not healthy either. That's like a risk factor for depression. And I did a study where I looked at links between testosterone levels and depression and found that men with lower postpartum testosterone had more postpartum depression symptoms. So you kind of don't want super low T, but you also don't necessarily want really high T in that initial transition to parenthood, because it's not really serving your goals, as a new dad. And so I think the message to men is kind of more like, you want testosterone levels that are dynamic and that are adaptive and that are responsive to your culture, your cultural demands, and if you're, or sort of your local situation. And if your priority is to be a really good caregiver, you should probably not be buying tea from Hims.
Juicing tea does not necessarily make you a better father, is what you're saying.
No, and it actually makes me nervous that we have all these young men that feel like they have to just be taking all this artificial tea. Like, I think that's become this weird culture wars thing. These men that are super jacked, like in like the MAGA cabinet. I'm like, it looks like they're all kind of pounding the tea, and I actually don't know if that's the best idea for our society.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of conversations going around about gender and gender, affirming care. And I think that's kind of, that's the other side of it too, is like all these men taking hormones later in life, that it's gender affirming care, right? Mm-hmm. That's the same sort of thing anybody else would, if they're looking to be the gender, to express the traits of the gender they feel inside. You feel like this big warrior man, but you find yourself with saggy boobs. Well, take this thing and you can reach, and then you can get plastic surgery to change your body shape to fit the gender that you feel that you are inside. I mean, or same with the women, in that kind of MAGA world where, it's the large lips and supple breasts, of childbearing ages when you're past those ages, or these, to fit some kind of stereotype of what it is you want to express or to fit in the culture that you feel like you need to be in. I mean, these are the same kind of conversations, but happening across very different, sides of a political spectrum.
Yeah. And it's almost like cartoonish, that it's like, feels like this exaggerated version of like what you think your gender should be like. And I'm kind of like, the science tells us that one of the best things about being human is that we're flexible, we're adaptable. We don't need to be like the most extreme man and the most extreme woman in order to have a satisfying life. Like, having a satisfying life usually means that you can like play different roles as your situation demands. And you have hormones that shift like according to that situational demand. And, so I worry, like, we don't just want like sky high testosterone in every man. Like, that doesn't seem actually like a great template for a society where men are involved in taking care of kids.
Right. And I think especially in a post-pandemic world where, for so many reasons, social or society's changing, our economy's changing, the ability to work, provide, all of these sort of things have all become, different than they were at a previous age. You know what I mean? I think, we're of an age where we go, oh, well, back in the early 2000s, we had a 1-bedroom apartment for $500 and we did this and we did that. And now here we are in a very different kind of world. So the flexibility, or this sort of adaptation that not only our generation, but the generations younger than us, will benefit from being flexible. And as things, it sounds like there are more changes to come in the future, socially, economically, across the board, that things will continue to be shifting. That having that, being able to see the positive nature of being flexible within those roles seems to be something that would provide for a happier life ultimately, right? I mean, this is kind of what we're talking about. What are the goals of all of this stuff? To be, I know that another big thing we hear in the news and we talk about, and maybe this doesn't directly relate to your research, but maybe there's a third party sort of correlation, is, lower birth rates, right? We're seeing less kids being born today. Does that, how does that relate into what we're doing? Do you think, is there a fear? I mean, I know that, the economy is one thing, I would thought I had to have $1 million before I became a dad. And, when upon closer inspection, like, I don't know what I would even do with that. I don't know what that means. I just didn't feel, there was more this internal sense of like, I could provide, or there's a safety net, or I have a nest egg, or literally build a nest, like, I don't own a home. I'm too young. I don't know how to do this. I think those are normal feelings that everyone has in going through that transition, becoming a parent. But how do you sort of reflect on that, or what are current times, or even, kind of future casting culturally about parenting?
I think it's a concerning trend, right? That the birth rate has been dropping, and not just in the US, but globally. So, there are already countries that are way below replacement, where like South Korea, for example, which has the lowest birth rate globally, like that country's population is really shrinking. And that's going to just change our geopolitics, and we're not going to have a workforce of young people. Like, I think it's a big issue. And so, and that's kind of another reason that I was interested in writing about fatherhood, because I do think like there's a lot of value for men in thinking about what makes a good life, like we've been talking about. And there's so much evidence that it's kind of like the quality of your relationships really matters. Like the men that have kind of the best late life, the healthiest aging, are men who are happy in their families. And so I think we maybe are giving young men some of the wrong messages. Like the manosphere is all about like chase wealth, chase status, have a lot of disposable girlfriends that, you know, who you don't really respect, and take a lot of tea, have big muscles. And it's like, this isn't really
dominate.
Yeah. Like dominate at all costs. And I think it's a really brittle understanding of masculinity, like in the same way that, you know, the cartoonishly like big lips and big boobs, like doesn't totally feel like a real version of femininity, right? It's like we have these extremes, but like, you know, a good life is embedded in high quality relationships with other people. And so I think we kind of need to see the value of that. And I think no.
Sorry.
And I think we've created a lot of barriers around having kids, like financially hurdles, home ownership is really tricky, standard of living is unaffordable. But I also think like, you know, maybe back in the day, like people would just have tons of kids and live in abject poverty. And there's got to be like a happy medium between like you have to have $1 million versus like you're just going to have 12 kids like living on scraps. Like, you know, we need to think about how to build sustainable families and kind of how to create like a culture and a society that really supports that.
It makes sense. Yeah. You know, what do happy, healthy family relationships look like, and how do we sort of plan or scaffold or support those models and within our culture, within our, you know, with even how we raise our own kids, I suppose, you know, that's part of it. Again, like we say, it's a generational messaging that goes through, you know, that goes through things. The alarm that went off, that was my screen time alarm for our youngest. That was he won't mind. He'll get an extra 10 minutes of screen time.
Oh, nice.
But that's again, but these are the questions, right? As parents, that, you know, we're you know, these are the things. If you're a young parent, how much screen time? How much do they get to do this? Do they get to do that? I'm curious as well. I mean, because this is something that, you know, I'm personally dealing with, but it's also a care for our own parents as our parents, you know, age. And, you know, and I think I can appreciate these types of examples. You know, I want to say like 30 something or like Modern Family or these kinds of things that I didn't really ever feel like, oh, I related to these things as a kid. I was like, what do you mean, man? I'm a punk. I don't know about these things. I don't want to wear sweaters and talk about these things. But I see like, oh, wait, this is what, you know, 40s and 50s look like, of caring for younger children and also caring for aging parents. I mean, as you know, just I guess in your from your perspective, how do I do it? It was the secret. I don't know.
Oh man, Randy.
No, but I mean, I guess that's really what I'm asking. But in a way, like, is there any insight to that as well? I mean, I guess caregiving is something that even if it's not for your young, even if you don't have kids, there may be a caregiving role asked from you in caring for your aging parents or caring for others in your community. Caregiving as a man is something that can happen in all kinds of ways, I suppose. You know, you know, even if
I think that's such an important point. It's like we hold on one sec. Hey, Henry, I'm taping a podcast. Can you be a little bit less bangy? Sorry. It's okay. My son just got home from 8th grade. I just don't want there to be like big footfalls in the background.
Oh, it's all good.
But yeah, I think this idea of like who's caring for our kids, our aging parents, our, you know, aging workers. Like we were just talking about the birth rate a minute ago. And one big consequence of a falling birth rate is you end up with way more old people than young people. And you literally do not have enough caregivers for this aging population. And so I think we're all kind of facing this like generational tsunami that is kind of coming our way as a society. And we have really traditionally feminized care. It's like it's women's work. Women are the ones who are in charge of taking care of babies and kids. Women are in charge of taking care of older adults. And that's not going to work anymore, right? Like women are participating economically in our society, and they're often not willing to take on the sole responsibility for care work. And we don't really have the public infrastructure that you see in other countries that have a stronger safety net, where you have really generous maternity and paternity leave, you have really generous elder care allowances. Like we haven't built that in this country. We kind of need to do that like ASAP, because it's a really challenging situation and we're not really rewarding care work, and it's important and meaningful, but we are not fully valuing it. So I think we need to really look at our value system. And to me, like part of how to do that is actually to make a pitch to men. It's like, men, you can do this too. You can be good at this too. There's no reason that you can't take on some of this really important work. Like you have these skills too. So if we think of care work as just like women's job, then I think we're going to create a huge care vacuum in our society. And that really worries me.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, it's definitely something that, I think we should all, it's just to be aware of. Like you said, generationally and culturally and all of these sort of things, that, we can sort of all play those roles, and it's something we're all finding here. But before we wrap up, I want to know, have you sold the rights to the book? Is there a Leonardo DiCaprio starring movie or Brad Pitt movie in the works here?
Oh, man.
Brad Pitt stars in Dad Brain.
Do you have some hotshot Hollywood producers listening?
Probably. Yeah. What's the pitch? What does it look like?
Like even
are your publishers on it?
Totally. When I was first writing the book, I was like, Dad Brain the movie. Okay. Yeah. Like not necessarily like a fiction kind of situation, but like I think it would be such a cool documentary because you have pictures of brains, you have conversations with researchers, you have all these adorable animals and interesting weird creatures. So I feel like there is so much science that you could turn into like a Netflix series or a documentary to go see in the movie. So or a documentary to go see in the theater. So yeah, if anyone is listening from Hollywood, give me a call.
Fantastic. I do think it is interesting, though. I think we really do need to update our depictions of dads. I think we're still learning about who dads are in this age. And it's a little bit more nuanced. It's not a snappy stand-up comedy routine yet. We don't have 5 minutes on the modern dad. And I think that's sort of what drives our culture so much, is just distillation and minimalism, when we're kind of dealing with a more nuanced, sort of introspective, developing and changing culture around these sort of roles. Yeah. So I think it could be updated, and we got to find the right sort of flag bearer for this. I think it's, I think your book is the head of the spear for that, and kind of science leading the way behind what does it mean to be a dad, and what are okay roles to play, or sort of, dads within our own sort of world of how do we become. I mean, I'm part of a dad's club at our school, and it's the funniest thing in the world. We meet at a bar close, not just far from the school on Tuesdays, the first Tuesday of the month. And not a lot of dads show up, but we do things, but we're the dads around, any events, we're moving tables, we're setting up the grill to grill the burgers, we're setting up the pop-up tents, and, just general dad sort of things, but it's a funny, but I think there's that feeling of like, oh no, more responsibility, even outside of the household. I think a lot of dads are busy and doing a lot of things, but so are moms. Everyone's busy, but this idea of like, okay, one more thing to put on your list of, responsibilities. And I think it can just become that like, I'm okay. I don't need this. I don't want to take on any more. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting.
But I think it's also like, and I talk about this in the book, like there are so many mechanisms for building community for new moms. Like, when I had my babies, I was in the Silver Lake Moms Club, and I joined a baby wearing club, and I went to a breastfeeding support group, and I, went to Mommy and Me yoga. I did all this stuff. And like, we don't really have that scaffolding around dads as much. And I think a lot of men get isolated when they transition into parenthood. And so I think it's really great that you have that. I hope more dads kind of opt into it, but it seems healthy because we're very lonely as a society.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big thing we're seeing too, right? Yeah, this men's loneliness issue is become a big sort of talking point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's around the branding though too. I mean, I think we're in a transitionary cultural sort of place. Or maybe that's just where my brain goes. I was like, well, we need a snappy T-shirt, we need a funny T-shirt, we need the thing you can, the big dog sort of thing. The iconography you had around what dads were and wore in the '80s. The white sneakers, and I think we're getting the chopped unk sort of cultural movement happening, but we need this kind of okay dad, okay boomer, okay dad, okay, that's what you can be. A dad. Dads can contain multitudes, not to co-opt a sensitive phrase, but there could be there is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Where are you on the dad spectrum in this kind of way? Again, to co-opt another sort of sensitive term. But because like you said, I think there's interesting things where it's like, well, everyone's expecting that moms just know how to become moms. So it kicks in. It just, the mom thing will happen biologically, physically, because you have the baby. And I think for the dads, it's becomes more questionable, but there's so many times in my own experience of just stuff around the house. Like, hey, fix this. My wife will ask me, or my kids will ask me, and I'm asked to fix things. That's just a very dad role. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. but what I will say is, in fear of losing face or of not, we got to call a guy. I don't know. It's so emasculating to call a repairman. But to me, this feeling like, well, I can go at YouTube now. And this online world of tutorials is, I've taken so many things apart that I should never have taken apart. But through these YouTubes, I can go and okay, and it looks like, oh, I'm dad tinkering. And I guess this is what all dads have done, unless you were the son of a certain, journeyman or a crafts person. If you didn't personally learn that craft yourself, which is, you're just expected to crowdsource it, but you can in so many funny ways.
Yeah. The resources are out there. And how it usually goes in my house. And I mean, Dan's very handy. He built a whole recording studio back in the day. He knows how to set up equipment and work with gear. But usually when something breaks in the house, it's he tries to fix it. It goes unfixed for a while.
Yes.
And then we call the plumber. So it's there's a little bit of a pattern, but it's true. And moms don't always know what to do. That's why there are a million parenting books and a million YouTube channels about parenting and a million parenting podcasts. So it's we seek out information, in the same way that you're seeking out information about things to fix. It's let's make that more democratic. So, dads know that they can access this material too. And they're going to also get that chance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it. I like this. I like this normalizing the new dad, the dad brain.
Yeah.
I think your book serves as a rallying cry. I recommend everyone go out and buy it. Speaking of which, where can people find the book? Where can people find you if they want to follow up more with you and follow everything you're doing? What's the best call to action?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So the book is out June 9th, and it's really helpful to authors when people pre-order or order copies close to launch, because then it gives a signal to bookstores to display it, to make sure they order enough copies of it. It sends a signal to retailers like Amazon and Bookshop to, list it prominently. So we're always looking for pre-orders. And people can go to my website. It's darbysaxbe.com, SAXBE. And that's where I'll be updating book tour info. And there's lots of info about the book there too.
Awesome. Okay. There'll be a link in our show notes. Everybody go there. Here we go. Yep. I got it pulled up here. It's so great. Yeah. When you Google dad brain, the first thing comes up is BBC. It's a great article from April, and Amazon's got the second link right there is the Amazon where to order it. Do you care if people order it from Amazon, or is there a better way to order it just straight through your website?
Honestly, however people want to do it, I am thumbs up for. I know sometimes people don't love Amazon. At the same time, if people do like to order from Amazon, getting it from there and then being able to write a review on Amazon is really great for their algorithm. So
that's the big shopper place.
Totally.
So you can buy it from an independent bookstore.
Yeah.
The link on your website, does that go through an independent source as well?
If you go to the book launch is going to be at Vroman's bookstore in Pasadena, so people can order from there. But there are lots of great indie. I mean, people should just go to their local bookstore. Just shop where you like to find your books. Because it's great for indie bookstores to know about it too, and that way it can be out and available and people can discover it. So, I'm a big bookstore person myself.
Heck yeah. And then is there an audio book to it? Did you read it or did somebody read it?
Yeah. So the audio book will be coming out also June 9th. And I read the introduction and I recorded it in Dan's studio. You will appreciate it. We used a very fancy microphone and set up a little isolation booth for me. And then the rest of the book was read by a professional narrator who actually knows what she's doing.
Okay.
But that's findable through, audible.com or whatever, however people like to order their audiobooks.
Great. All right. Well, we need the Dad Brain Band to go on tour and help, play some music and talk about Dad Brain. You got to set up the Dad Brain Band tour.
Totally, because it's already like Bad Brains, Dad Brains. Like there's that.
Oh my gosh! Wait, there's the thing. I didn't even think about that.
Yes, the Dad Brains.
Yeah.
We got it. I've got Spiral Stairs on board. It sounds like you're willing to sign up.
Let's go. I'm in. I'm in the band.
You're in the band. You are my first draft pick.
I love it. Oh, that's so fun. Well, Darby, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking all the time here, and everybody go out and buy the book, and and write in. Let us know what does the new dad look like? Are you a new dad? How does it all work? This is a conversation starter. This isn't the end of the conversation. This is the beginning, right? This is sort of where things spark off, and a book and based on research and science is a great place to sort of move forward with information. You know what I mean? So as you talk to other people, you're not just spouting, I heard somebody say a thing on a thing. I saw a video. It's like, oh, I read a book. Remember those things? And it's written by a very well-researched and very well-accredited author and researcher. So there's a good place to start a cultural revolution, right? From science. Why not?
From your lips to God's ears. Love it.
There is. You don't have to do your own research. There's real research has been done at real research laboratories at real accredited universities.
That's right.
You don't have to go out there and try horse semen drugs. There's real science has been done by real scientists. You can base it on that and then apply that to your life. What a concept on a podcast. Talk about real science.
Yeah. It's revolutionary.
Revolutionary. Here it is. All right. Well, Darby, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks you so much. My pleasure.
Yes, Darby Saxbe, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. That was such a great conversation. I had so much fun. And how do you like that? A cameo by Scott Kannenberg, Spiral Stairs from Pavement, coming in the middle of the show, interrupting. Hopefully we'll have an interview with Scott coming up later this summer. Look forward to that. And go buy Darby's book. It's out. Dad Brain. It's everywhere. You can go to darbysaxbe.com, DABRYSAXBE.com. You can also follow her on Instagram, Darby Saxbe PhD, DABYSAXBE PhD. And then Macmillan Publishing, us.macmillan.com. And just look for Dad Brains. Oh yeah, she also has a great Substack, darbysaxbe.substack.com. It's a great place to keep up on everything that she has coming out, and extra writings, extra reflections, and she's fantastic and super smart, and she's great. So you're not going to be bored. It's an incredible follow. And so fun. I'm so stoked for Darby and this great book, and I think everybody's got to go read it. So do yourself a favor, have a fun book to read this summer, and be well. Hang in there. Summertime's happening. It's warming up. Enjoy the sun. And you can write me at Randy. Oh wait, no, where am I? Oh, on Instagram at Randy S. Randall. And then the email is hyphenate@gmail.com. Let me know what you're up to. Let me know what you're reading for this summer. Let me know what your dad brain is doing this summer. All right. Be well, everyone. See you on Monday.
What's cool about dads is that they aren't experiencing the pregnancy, yet we know they're also participating in care. They're also getting experience with a baby, with a child. So they're undergoing change, but without the hormones of pregnancy, it's like, so what does the experience do to the brain? So it's almost like a way to separate out, like when you're studying moms, you're conflating pregnancy experience, pregnancy hormones, pregnancy changes with parenting experiences. So with dads, it's like you can separate out pregnancy and parenting, right? Those are two separate things.